The United States is one of the most prosperous, wealthy countries to ever exist in the history of humankind, and yet, if you look at its average happiness index score, it is not even close to number one in terms of countries around the world. So, it's doing some things wrong. It's not perfect. It's a great example of how you need to deplug yourself from some of the noise out there and really figure out what is really important in life. That's why, one of the reasons why I've read a lot of books on happiness from a scientific perspective, and they're great books, and there's a lot of scientific studies on them. Some books, they weren't that great, but today I want to address one really quick topic, which is on things that society does that can affect you negatively. I see this, and it's something I'm working with, and I think it's something that you can start realizing and fixing. And it's interesting because, you know, people, you assume that people who are old or they've been on the earth for a while, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, oftentimes you can assume that they're just by definition well experienced and they know everything and everything's fine and dandy. That's not always the case. You know, a lot of people in their mid 30s, mid 40s, they're still constrained, or they're still kind of confused with life and floundering around, or they're doing things that they're not really happy with, or they're unfulfilled. So let's first off talk about things that can create this mess. So in modern society, especially with commercials, advertisements, businesses, all these things coming together, you can get this situation where, because of pop culture and all this stuff blasted at you, you think that this is what you need, and this is what you should chase after, and this is what you should be. And so many people conform to that, or they're so influenced by it, and they don't even realize it. I see it all the time. And they're so influenced by fitting in, females especially in terms of body image. They have to look a certain way. They want to dress a certain way. And I mean, there could be a whole variety of issues. You can think that you want a certain type of person to marry. You might think that this is the house that you have to live in. These are the things you have to chase, which is usually money and material possessions. And it can all lead to a huge mess of feeling unfulfilled and happy. And I've done a lot of videos specifically on these topics of, well, does this actually add to happiness? And what you'll find is, based off scientific studies, I mean, a lot of it is not really related to happiness. So what is one of the key reasons why things aren't really working with society? Well, despite this country having all this knowledge and research, more so than any other time in history, in terms of happiness, I think one of the huge disconnects is that in terms of the culture and society as a whole, and these books that kind of open the door and open the way and show you, well, that's not actually conducive to happiness. It's not really being distilled or affecting the culture of society as a whole. These businesses are still pumping out these commercials. People are still chasing these things, and they're really not concerned about, oh, should we listen to the study and promote other things? No, let's just continue with these types of things. And then it's a whole mess of people playing on things that attract more buyers, or genetically attract more people and eyeballs to buy products. I mean, men are genetically, generally speaking, there's a lot of exceptions because people are different, but generally speaking, they are attracted to shorter waists, bigger hips, certain body proportions, and so forth. So these things sort of pull at you, and then I guess a lot of businesses, it's not all the businesses' fault. A lot of businesses are pretty cool, but some of them, they capitalize on this, whether they want to or not, because they know that this is how it is. Long story short, you get these situations where that's what people chase after. So I don't want to go too deep into explaining this, because I mean, I'm sure there's more reasons out there, and I don't know all of them. But the purpose of this video was just to tell you guys that you have to sort of step away from all this conditioning and this culture. And I see it all the time in females and males, and they think that I have to look a certain way, I have to act a certain way, I have to dress a certain way, I have to marry a certain type of person because of these traits, and on and on and on. I have to have this picket fence house, I have to have these types of friends. It could be a whole mess that can lead you nowhere, can lead you very unhappy, and it's darn time that you start thinking for yourself and stepping away and unplugging and thinking, well, why should I care if this girl is high status or not? Or why should I care if that person, my neighbor, has this expensive car? And I'm telling you, a lot of these things can lead to unnecessary unhappiness and this rat race. So understand that, and it can be very helpful. I mean, I was just watching this Oprah interview, and these two people, it's interesting because they were in their mid-30s, and they had followed this ruse for a long time. So even people who are older, just because they're older doesn't mean that they know everything about the world. You know, they fell into this ruse themselves, and long story short, both of them were homosexual, but they had a heterosexual relationship, and they were married, and they had children, and they had 3 children, I believe, and they were married for years. And finally they realized that, okay, you know, both of them had knew their whole life that you know, they weren't straight, but they hid that because they wanted to conform to what society expected of them. So that's an extreme case, but use it simply as a model for all the other things out there that you could be using to conform to whatever society expects of you. I mean, what's this whole thing about society anyways? Like, certain things like being muscular and buff, I mean, I'm going to do that for myself and maybe to attract better girls. But as far as what society thinks, I mean, you shouldn't really care about that. And I mean, it can be so many different things. For females, it could be, oh, I need to have a boyfriend, or I need to dress a certain way, otherwise they won't like me. So again, you know, some of that may be, you know, it may be natural and all right, but I'm sure a certain extent of that is very extremist, and it's influenced by all this stuff that I've been talking about. So really, just take some time alone, not with your computer or your phone, just some alone time, and maybe write it out. Write out things that you think you want to be a certain way, and society or whatever else, people, friends, want you to look or feel or act another way, or do, or it could be a status thing, it could be a relationship thing, so forth. And really just, you know, pull that apart and really question, do I really need to do this? Do I really need to follow these standards? Do I really have to look a certain way, act a certain way, behave in a certain way, and figure out what's really essential and important from what's just bogus stuff that's unnecessary. So I'll just wrap it up with some aspects of my own life to give you an example. So, for me, I am proud to be a nerd and a geek. I embrace that, and if anyone asks me, I make a point not to shy away from it, and I embrace it. You know, there are people out there who conform or hide or pretend to be a jock, or, I mean, I hate using those terms because in real life, I don't think people just fall into one category like that. Sometimes they do, but most of the time, no. But the point is, as an example, I feel that it's ridiculous pretending that you can't be a certain person. And I think you can be awesome being a nerd. There's a lot of awesome things about having a deep interest in academic or quirky topics. So That's one example. Uh, I also do think that there are certain things that it's it's good to improve on them, just because um, it will help you out. And it just so happens that also in terms of society as a whole, they prefer these certain things. So one example is um, a lot of deep introverts who are very isolated, hermit type people. They have a lot of really weird social quirks that make them very creepy, very weird, very strange, very erratic, or just sound alarm bells when they talk to other people. Whether it's because they don't talk to people much, or they just have really bad social intelligence and so forth. And I think it's just very healthy for you um, to iron those things out, and healthy for other people. And there's a host of reasons why. You can make more friends. You can be a better, healthier person in terms of talking to others, and other things like, I mean, if you can hone those out, you could be more agreeable, and um, people will actually interact with you and stuff like that. And I mean, if not, whether it's true or not, you may be categorized into that pile of people who people stay away from because they think you're weird, or you may be, you know, homicidal or some bizarre freak.